Welcome everyone, this is Russell here from the Power Button channel, here to introduce what I hope is the channel's first video series, the low tiers. But before I get into the nitty gritty of the video, I want to talk about a few brief things first before we start. First, yes, this is a series in partiality inspired by Rank 10 Yu-Gi-Oh! Series of Yu-Gi-Oh! Videos, and I'll be looking at crazy bad fighting game characters in relation to the games that they're in. Rank 10 does a similar series for Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards and archetypes, so if you can, please go check him out. He's definitely a funny guy, and his skits with Shape Snatch are always enjoyable to watch. The second thing is that for this series, I'm particularly limited by community resources I have available to me, so I'll be giving various hateful shoutouts whenever I can, just so they can get better attention and maybe get some more support for what they're working on. This content can include stuff like hitbox viewers and stuff of generally that nature. I want to support the community any way I can, and I'll be happy to use whatever resources I can find. For this video, I'm going to be thankful and use the graphs and templates made by the Shoryuken Wiki, who I recommend checking out for information and technical details on your favorite fighter, barring some very silly King of Fighters pages. Now that that's out of the way, Super Turbo is an interesting game to say the least. Commonly referred to as the best Street Fighter game, Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, or as it will be referred to for the remainder of the video, ST, was the first in the series that managed a competitive scene that's still around even in 2018. Nostalgia aside, however, this is the game that really shows its age in a lot of technical areas, especially in its glitches and outdated mechanics. Now, today's character really isn't ruined by any game-breaking glitches, per se, but more so extreme developer oversight. M.Bison, or Vega as he's known in Japan, or better known as Dictator when it comes to international scenes, had a significant fall from grace since he was straight up ported as a playable boss character from previous Street Fighter 2 revisions. He isn't the worst in the game by any means, don't worry, I'll get to her eventually, but he did take a dramatic fall from grace that's left him with a lot of glaring weaknesses that'll become all the more clear once you start going over his moves. One last thing, I'll be going over the new, make quotes there, version of the character, the one that actually has a super and can tech grows. Old Dictator, if you'd like to try him out for some godforsaken reason, also has the most fitting selection code known to man, requiring you to press down, up, down, and then press any punch button. Dud. For his normals, we'll start with his standing jab, and an explanation on what the visuals in the graph mean. Starting from the top left, we have damage. For context, 150 damage is a full bar of life in this game. Stun being how much stun a move will add to a character's invisible stun meter that dizzies it full. It's random how big this can be, but 30 is usually a good limit. Stun timer being how many frames before the stun meter resets after hitting with a move. Chain cancel means if a normal upon contact in any way can cancel out into itself or another normal. Special cancel means whether or not you can cancel a normal move into a special upon contact. Super cancel means whether or not you can cancel a normal move into a super on contact. Frame advantage meaning how much of a frame advantage you will have if you hit the opponent with the first active frame of a move. Minuses meaning a disadvantage, and pluses meaning advantage. And super meter, which only applies to special moves and shows you just how much super meter you gain from using said special. And then we have those weird boxes surrounding him. The blue boxes are hurt boxes, meaning where the character can get hit or affected by throws. The red boxes are hit boxes, meaning if you're attacking, this is where and how big your respective attack will be. Orange and cyan boxes are for projectiles, yellow is for throws, white and black boxes define what throws can affect them, white for grounded characters and black for airborne characters, and green boxes serve to prevent the characters from walking through each other. The last part I need to touch on are the bars at the bottom. These bars showcase how long frame-wise a character will stay in a certain frame of animation before moving on to the next. A frame time-wise is 1/60th of a second. The simplified section just adds an extra frame because there is a 1 frame delay between when you push a button and when the character will actually do something. Explanations aside, back to standing jab. This move really only serves some situational usage. Being a jab, it is fast as hell and can act like a pseudo anti-air if timed right, and it can beat Honda headbutts, which you want to avoid getting hit by in that matchup. Otherwise, it's not really too useful though. His crouching jab is just about the same in usefulness. Its priority is a hell of a lot worse, the damn red bar barely extending past that block of blue, but this move does higher potential stun and stun timer. It's the jab you'll often try to combo into or start tick rows from. Because of it, it's the better of the two, but not by much. The next one we're going to look at takes us airborne, with neutral jumping jab, or neutral jab. Neutral being just jump upwards in the air. This is where design-wise Dictator kinda shows he didn't get that much attention, because although the hitbox is nice, it would have been better if it had been swapped with the abomination that is Diagonal jumping jab. Or diagonal jab. It's just ridiculous. Like, what the fuck are those on his shins? Like, he gonna get his damn Timbs ruined, man. Anyways, neutral is okay. You'll have to be high as balls if you ever want to intentionally use the diagonal one. That idiocy aside, the next move I'm going to go into requires me to go into some technical Street Fighter jargon. In certain Street Fighter games, normal moves will change depending on how close you are to your opponent. These are called either close or far normals. Close standing strong is just one of those variants. Unlike the far variant of this move, it's active on frame 3 and what you'll be using to stun your opponents with. Just gotta be careful of them with long recovery periods don't miss to cancel. Also on some characters, this move can register as a low to them in certain situations, meaning they must crouch block this thing. Learning how to combo into this is key to playing Dictator. Just for brevity's sake, I'm just gonna sum up the disaster that is far standing strong by just saying this. Get in there if you want to give him that dick. Crouch strong is essentially a worse standing jab. You get the worst of both worlds. You lose the ability to completely defend against Tonda headbutt spam, and you have much better normals to cancel into specials with. For aerials, we're just going to get to the important one because neutral strong is just a copy-pasted neutral jab, with added damage and stun, and it's still not worth using for the very same reasons. No, the real normal we're going to give any sort of attention to here is diagonal strong. It's just bloody awesome, man. It's one of the only two normal aerials in the game that can hit twice and juggle besides Ryu's, but remember what I said about the neutral jump jab? Well, this serves that very purpose. It's a good air-to-air move that can combo into itself or super if you have to charge for that. Keep him out of the air with a straight super to the face. And now we get on to his fierce variants, and this is where the big elephant in the room that Stick's weakness kinda comes to attention. I'm gonna save us a time though and just say ignore close standing fierce, as it's hot garbage for the same reasons that far standing strong is. No, the normal I'm gonna give any sort of attention to here is far standing fierce. You see that little fist attack Dick is doing to the air like some angry old man yelling to the clouds? Well, I too would be that pissed as this is my main anti-air. Yes, that's it, that's the whole thing. God forbid you miss with this piece of shit too. All jokes aside, this thing does have a decent hitbox size for a fierce, but more often than not, you'll be wishing you had full super each time you're forced to use this hot garbage. Continuing with this spree of developer oversight, we have Crouching Fierce, which serves a similar purpose but is ultimately outclassed by the far standing variants in almost every capacity. While it does have a wide hitbox, you'll want to go into other normals that can be special cancelled over this piece of crap any day. Lastly, punch-wise, we come back to his aerials, and they really don't stand on par with diagonal jumping strong. Neutral Fierce does have a better hitbox in exchange for not being active this long, so it could be worse, but his kick neutrals all outclass them. Like, seriously, don't use this over your kick normals any day. Diagonal Fierce sees the return of that weird animation from Diagonal Jab, and it's just as useful as Diagonal Jab was. You have better aerials you should be going into over this, so don't really use it ever. To start his kick normals, we have Close Standing Short. This is Dictator's best combo tool and likely one of his best normals. It combos into Close Standing Strong, any forward variation, Crouching Short, and itself normal-wise. It can also kickstart Dictator's stellar tick throw game if you time it right. Not really much else to say here, this is a godsend for Dictator players and you should be spamming this constantly if given the opportunity. Far Standing Short is a button that you never want to press because it's just a version of Close Short that just lasts longer, and will thusly defeat the purpose of it. Crouching Short is good for catching people off guard, but it really doesn't have any application outside of that. There's a normal coming up that harasses far better than the sprint-eating kick can, despite using the same animation. Use sparingly. Neutral Short is a good air-to-air move or move you want to draw out when landing. You can beat some jump-ins with this stun lane, and the duration might throw people off a little. Diagonal Short is a train wreck, yo. Again, there's better buttons to press when airborne, so why are you even touching this thing? Anyways, we start as forwards with Close Standing Forward. My god, we're almost done with this shit. It's another thing you can combo Close Standing Short into, but it's the worst option honestly because of its properties. You can't special or super cancel it, so it's something you should never go into instead of Close Standing Short under any circumstance. Far Standing Forward is marginally better because it's Dictator's main poking tool. It has a fat hitbox pinned to his toes, and more often than not, he'll have the priority to make it threatening. Even taking a trade with this thing is beneficial because it stops you from getting cornered by certain moves. Overall, it's a move you'll be stopping and applying pressure with. Crouching forward while not looking as impressive in frame meta as Standing Strong serves a different purpose, as its fatter hitbox allows for combos that wouldn't be possible otherwise. It's the key to Dictator's power though, as a lot of his longer combos prior to use of this over close standing strong due to knockback issues. Because of its range and its classification as a close, you'll often be left outside of its range. And because crouching forward isn't range dependent, you'll often be wanting to go into this for longer combos. And of course, special cancelling out of this. Another way to be absolutely cheeky with this move is to use it as a meaty, wherein you hit with the last active frame of the attack instead of the first, which can allow for some unique combo situations. Overall, yeah, this move's a learner. Learn how to implement this into your combos at all costs. Neutral forward continues the tradition of Dictator's forwards being completely awesome. It doesn't do as much damage as his neutral roundhouse or stay out as long as neutral short, but it gets the job done. Another marginally impressive aerial move is diagonal forward, also known as Revenge of the Tims. That giant square of red surrounding his legs and green square from the torso upwards mean this is one of his best cross-up tools. Timed correctly, you'll force your opponent into guessing which direction to block, meaning you'll have a significant advantage over them. If they guess wrong, they're likely going to eat a tick throw or a full-on dizzy attempt. This move can also function as the instant overhead on crouching opponents. So yeah, this is one of his best moves. Please learn how to use it if you ever want to play Dictator. We end his normals with roundhouse checks, starting with close standing roundhouse. It's an interesting move to say the least, as in you can combo into it off some light attacks, but ultimately it's not worth going into over big special moves or dizzy combos. Far standing roundhouse shares some similarities with far standing forward. It's a really good poking tool that trades damage for a somewhat middling recovery. It's best used to punish moves with longer recovery like Shoryukens. Crouching roundhouse has us look at Dictator's signature slide move. A noob's favorite, it moves Dictator across the screen while causing a full-on knockdown, but ultimately it's something you want to use sparingly. Best case scenario to use this move is when you're absolutely sure you can make it connect as a meaty, just so that you don't get punished if it gets blocked. If it connects, then good for you, you'll be annoying the hell out of your opponent on wake up. But if you get punished for it, you should have probably considered another pressure option. Neutral roundhouse is just neutral forward with less active frames and a bigger hitbox. Timed correctly, you get more damage, but neutral forward's still the preferred aerial option. Diagonal roundhouse is Dictator's other aerial pressure move. This is his go-to jump-in and combo starter. It's usually the commensurate of Dictator's many touch-of-death dizzy combos. The standard being jump-in, charging back as always, diagonal roundhouse, crouching forward, and then canceled into a fierce Psycho Crusher for near half-life. Pretty good combo, all things considered. And with that, we're done with Dictator's normals. Before we get to his specials, I thought I'd talk about his throw first, because I thought it fit better here. The aptly named Deadly Throw is a cornerstone of Dictator's offensive game. It's done by pressing left or right, depending on the direction you want to throw them, and then pressing strong or fierce. Even if the opponent properly techs his throw, they'll still be left in a pretty long recovery animation, allowing you time to get some positional advantage. The problem here though is that Dictator only has punch throws, while most other characters in the game have punch and kick throws. This is a problem for Dictator more often than not because he'll be unable to detect those throws usually if he's trying to go for his own throws. So yeah, just be a little bit more on edge when you try to go for throws with Dictator. Now that throws are out of the way, let's move on to his specials. While his specials don't entirely amend some of the problems talked about earlier, they at least back up what's the core of any strong Dictator player. That being overwhelming your opponent in various situations. For this section, I'll also need to clarify directional and button inputs briefly, or the buttons you push in a specific manner in order to perform a special move. Dictator is one of the few charge characters in the game, meaning you have to hold a certain direction on the joystick for a set period of time before pushing it in the opposite direction to do his specials. Movement in the game is confined to 8 directions, but as long as you're holding a joystick in a given direction to charge a special move, you'll be fine. For example, let's say you need to charge a move by holding backwards. You only need to vaguely hold backwards, so you can hold down back or up back and still maintain charge. Like all special moves, the attack button pressed also determines various factors of the special move. Lighter buttons usually mean that the move is faster but overall does less damage. Middles are in the middle. And heavy attacks are usually a lot slower but do a lot more damage by contrast. I should note that this can vary between special move and fighting games, but this is how it's usually done. We start his special moves with Psycho Crusher, done by holding any backwards direction for approximately 60 frames, then moving it forward plus pressing any punch button. This move used to be what made Dictator so godlike back in earlier Street Fighter II revisions. It was far more invulnerable, traveled long enough to make it safe even when blocked, and even if they did block it, they were still going to eat a lot of chip damage and be left in block stun long enough to probably eat another or a tick throw attempt. Now it's just more or less your main combo ender. The jab version can also be used to get out of tick throw attempts. Outside of those two situations though, don't spam this move, you'll get punished hard for it. His next special move is double knee press, done by charging back for 78 frames, then moving forward plus pressing any kick button. You essentially trade combo versatility for a move that's safer to advance with. And yes, those 18 frames of required charge time do stop it from being used in certain combos that work with Psycho Crusher. For when you can use both though, this is the safer of the two if you're willing to trade a bit of damage. The short version of this move can also be used to build meter safely from a distance if you're gutsy enough to try it, but there's a better special for that. To sum it up, it's a safer but weaker version of Psycho Crusher. Next up is Head Stomp, done by holding down for 60 frames then pressing up plus any kick button. Dictator flies up in the air towards the opponent, who he'll head stomp at the legs. Different versions of this move have different practical uses. The short version can be used to safely counter some characters' reversals, like Guile's Flash Kick, and the forward and roundhouse versions can help you get around some certain fireball traps. Just make sure you don't use this move at full screen distance, otherwise you'll eat a nasty anti-air most likely. After you successfully connect with a head stomp, you can go for the Somersault Skull Diver, in which that stupid Superman-ass looking pose makes a return and actually becomes somewhat useful. Jab is the one you'll want to be using though. It has better recovery time, does the same stun as the other two, and you'll be right next to your opponent, so distance isn't really an issue. All versions set up for ground combos too if they hit a grounded opponent, so going for this after a successful head stomp is almost never a bad idea. Lastly, we have Devil's Reverse, done by charging down for 60 frames, then pressing up plus any punch button. It looks very similar to head stomp at first, but pressing punch at any point in the jump will cause Dictator to do a backflip and extend one of his hands as he glides down. You can control Dictator during the downward glide, but the initial jump is the same as head stomp. For some strange reason, the punch used to initiate the move only determines the recovery. The punch you press to initiate the backflip determines the damage. So whenever doing this, just press jab and then do the fierce for the glide down so you get max damage and the best recovery. Anyways, this is the safest way Dictator can deal meter from afar. You can even maintain backward charge during the entire time in case your opponent decides to pressure you. Considering what I'm about to say about his super, proper spamming of this move to build meter is an absolute must if you can make it safe. And finally, we have Dictator Super, Knee Press Nightmare, done by holding backwards for 70 frames, then pushing the stick forward, backwards, and then forward, plus any kick button. This is Dictator's only safe reversal and anti-air move. Why they didn't think to give him a safe anti-air until the alpha games is a question best left for them high IQ, too good for anti-air people. Dictator does an invincible double knee press, followed by a vulnerable one. The last hit of this move is one of the rare launchers in the game, meaning double hitting moves like Dictator's Diagonal Strong will combo after it. I shouldn't even have to go into much detail on why having this move and eating damage just to build meter for this move is important. You literally die in the corner without it in some matchups. Especially against E. Honda, who thanks to his own set of glitches that allow him to store his throw by holding the last directional input required for it, can safely throw you to death in the corner if you don't eat damage while trying to build meter for this thing. It's just the godsend of a move that Dictator's cursed to try and build meter for every time he wants to actually get out of something. Now for them Psycho grades. Like I said earlier, I'm going to be using rank 10/Radas format, so at the end of each video I'll be giving 5-point grades in 4 categories. Categories are more or less changed, however, because of applicability to fighting games. Offense. His ability to be scary nets him a solid 4. He can be really intimidating if he gets his big combos off, and skilled Dictator should know how to utilize his stun abilities. However, defensively, he's in the red with a weak 1 out of 5. Just don't let your opponent pressure you at all when using this character. You will die. Movement gets a solid 4. He has very fast walk speed, and all the specials help him get around. It's just he usually can't make his options safe, so that bad defensive rating kind of bleeds over here. Versatility gets a 3. There's many different ways to play around with Dictator's moves, but his game plan usually revolves around him of using the same moves, regardless of style. And finally, tier-wise, I'd feel just ever so inclined to rank him as a 3. He can either be godlike or just get completely decimated in an inhumane manner when he's off game. I really like Dictator design-wise, all previous gripes aside. He's the odd one out amongst the game's bosses tier-wise, and he has some fun wonky stuff that make him fun to mess around with. For recommended players to watch, Riz1 is one of the best Western Dictators and probably the best one on the planet, so be sure to watch some of his games if you plan to pick up the character. Anyways, yeah, that about wraps up the video, guys. I hope you enjoyed this rather lengthy breakdown of Dictator. If you liked the video, please be sure to like and subscribe. If there's something you feel I missed, glossed over, or messed up, please comment. I'll be sure to try to get back to you guys as soon as possible. This has been Russell. Catch you guys next time.